Ready for brand stories? Get inspired and learn from thought leaders, CEOs, business owners, managers, entrepreneurs, and experts who tell their brand stories and share their first-hand insights. Welcome to BrandsTalk. I'm your host, Brigitte Bakowski. I support entrepreneurs and organizations like you to become future market leaders by transforming their ambitions and passion into an online brand that radiates beauty, brilliance, and authenticity, attracting the clients and recognition they deserve. Let's get started and dive with me into the world of brands. My guest today is Kyle Gray. Kyle is a world-class presentation coach, story strategist, and author who helps coaches, startups, and executives use storytelling to better communicate their unique value and improve sales with their audience. He combines timeless storytelling with cutting-edge marketing to ensure you've got the right story to tell while presenting on a sales call or in a conversation, both online and offline. I warmly welcome Kyle Gray. Welcome to BrandsTalk.
Brigitte, thank you so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to this moment for several weeks, and I can't wait to dive in.
Me too. I'm so happy to have you here. You are the master of storytelling, and we all are eager to learn from you today. But before we dive into storytelling and what it helps us to communicate our brand and sell our services as well, we would like to know, why are you doing what you're doing? How did you get there?
Awesome. One thing, before I am going to answer that question, I'm going to answer it with a story. And just to set the stage a little bit, one of the things I love about being really good at storytelling is you can understand and observe your audience, your listeners, who's around you, who needs to hear this story. And if you know what makes up a good story and a little bit about your listener, it provides a great amount of clarity in which story to tell. And so you can always have a different story to tell. And I think a lot of the problems that a lot of experts experience is they just want to try to say 99 things at the same time. They don't know how. But that brings me to my story, because I remember this feeling from a much younger age. And Brigitte, I think you know this feeling very well as well. I am a traveler. And in my 20s, the only thing that made sense to me was finding ways to go live in other countries. I learned to speak Spanish and Portuguese. And in that process of learning to speak different languages, there were countless days of profound frustration, of a certain kind of exhaustion, when you are an intelligent person and you have all of these thoughts and you just can't express in the language you have the complexity or the depth of what you're thinking. And you feel dumb in a way, because you know these thoughts are there, but they just can't come out of the mouth. And it's like takes so much effort to piece these things together. But 1,000 days of this is what it takes to learn a language. And there was one day where I remember in Argentina, I was sitting in the back of a car after living there for 5 months. I'd lived in Chile for a few months, spent a lot of time learning Spanish, made a tremendous amount of mistakes along the way. But I'm sitting in the back of this car, and two Argentinians are speaking with each other in the front seat, and I'm sitting in the back. And they're talking to each other. And this is the first time that I realized that I'm like kind of passively listening, and I'm understanding what they're saying, and I'm understanding what's going on. And usually, again, if in the early stages of speaking another language, if you're talking to somebody, you want to look them in the eyes and listen to every single word. It's kind of hard to catch if people are just talking with each other. And so that's when I felt the connection and things really started to click. And that's similar to the experience of fluency that I want to provide in just conveying your thoughts in a way that emotionally translate in the same way, in the way that you feel them, to land with other people. And that is why I do what I do.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you for telling us where you're at and why you're doing what you're doing in the form of a story, because it just shows us how interesting that is just to listen to that and get a really better understanding where you are coming from. It's kind of from deep within, the desire to do something that is part of your journey, right? And helping others to do the same thing. So now you are bridging and connecting storytelling with branding and sales. So, why is storytelling such an important skill to possess in sales?
Storytelling, and when I say storytelling, I think it's important to define really what it
Mhm.
is, because most of us have an outdated or inadequate definition of
Mhm.
storytelling, which is something along the lines of recounting something that happened to me in the past is what we think a story is. But it's a tool to guide somebody through a decision or a process. And in a lot of ways, it's like we're setting a table or we're inviting people for a meal. And if you were to invite a bunch of friends over for dinner, would you ask them what their dietary preferences are? Or would you just immediately assume all your diet? This is getting even more complex these days. But,
Yeah.
if I want to eat, pizza, but everybody else is gluten-free, not going to be a very fun meal for them. So I want to understand what everybody likes and what everybody needs so I can cook the best meal possible. In the same way, here's why this is so useful and really fun and why it's really flexible. It's not about having one perfect story or one perfect script. The story I just told you, I've never told that before. And in fact, before we got on this, I hadn't thought of this story before, but I understand frameworks, and I was doing a certain process of listening, which I use with many of my clients to build stories. And so here's the information, I gathered. We've talked before and we've connected over being foreigners in different places. And so I knew you would resonate with that particular experience. And then I took that experience from a moment in my life and I translated it over to something happening right now. And so this is a process of just being able to assess what people need. But this actually helped me through my listening. I was able to identify a story that I haven't really thought of before, but this is really useful. It's really interesting.
Mm.
And I'll probably go tell it again somewhere else now. High five me. But what's really magic here is this is how the process can work. It can be a fluid thing. It's not about having a script for everything. And so bringing this back to sales, we can in the same way listen and ask questions and adapt our language and our stories and what we teach to set a perfect table for them to overcome their objections before they arise. Hopefully we can do this before they get on the sales call. We want to do this in our marketing and in everything that happens before, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
And we get more qualified, better clients who have less objections because we can listen to them and understand them and speak their language and make a better invitation to our products and services.
Yeah. So what I get here is that first of all, you need to know who you are because, it's your life, it's your journey, it's your stories. Everything that you have experienced can become a story that you can use. But on the other side or on the other hand, you need to know your ideal client. So you need to do a lot of market research. What are the motivations? What drives them? What's their aspirations? What are the desires? What are their dreams? What is their pain, right? So
Yeah.
doing the research, but also when you're interacting, when you're selling, listen. I think it's about listening what they are saying so that then we can connect and then come up with the right story to tell. And that's what I'm getting out of here right now. And I also believe that there are some people that are gifted. They have that. It's just, yeah, they are born with that natural gift of being a storyteller. I know someone, he's always telling stories and people love sitting with him and until the morning because he is such a great storyteller. And there are others that are not. So is storytelling also something that we can learn? Is it a skill that can be learned?
Absolutely. I like to think of storytelling as a skill we can learn and apply in a similar way to a martial art, something that we practice so that when we are in a high stakes situation, we can perform with confidence and without hesitation. But it's absolutely something we can. And even the natural storytellers, either there's a lot of like storytellers that are good at like a party storyteller, the guy that they tell the stories, or just the long form storyteller, campfire
Yeah.
storyteller. And these may be good and useful in their own ways, but to really understand the purposes of storytelling in the context of building a relationship
Mhm.
with a client,
Mhm.
or maybe a potential joint venture partner, or even being able to convey the value you want to see in the world to your partner, or to your kids, or to anybody else.
Mhm.
But really, storytelling is a skill, and it's actually, I see it as a technology. It's our first technology as humans. It was a practice we developed to communicate with each other and to share knowledge and experience without having to experience them firsthand. And so a storytelling is the closest approximation, or like the key elements of an experience, which a lot of the times has been written down like the hero's journey, which really formulates this. Hey, I was, things were normal, and then I found a problem and it hurt.
Yeah.
And then I needed to figure something out, and I did, and then things got better. And this is really useful in the context of building a civilization and sharing knowledge and experiences. But what these stories need, depending on the purpose, if we first need to understand stories serve a purpose. And then, so we ask first, well, what purpose do we want to achieve? And there's a couple simple ones that we would want to achieve in most sales conversations, marketing, signature talk. First one, we want the person to want to listen to us and actually trust what we have to say, right?
Mhm.
And maybe even like us a little bit. A lot of us skip this part because we're like, well, I am so smart and I have so much knowledge. They just want the knowledge, don't they?
Yeah.
False. There's infinite knowledge in this world. And in fact, you can find the answer, whatever answer to whatever question you want to have out there in the world right now.
But
And
it's
what's rare is wisdom, is insight, is connection. What's rare is somebody that I feel understands me.
Mhm.
And just kind of how I mentioned in just like figuring out which story to tell right now, we have a better connection because we had that same experience that we resonate on. And so how can we find those things in common with our audience and create that experience of I'm the authority, but I understand you, and I've been through this process that you're going through, the pain that you're going through right now, and I've gone to the other way. And actually, somebody on my podcast was talking about this point of this kind of story really early. The thing that we want to do really well in these stories that open it up, he was talking about being in a business, kind of in a ceiling mode, burning out, classic business story. And he ends up reading a book. And in this book, for the first time, somebody's describing his problems and his situation, and he's confused because he's like, I thought my business was unique. And this guy wrote a book, and he's like reading word for word what's happening to me. And it impacted him so deeply that he went and made dramatic changes to his business. What just happened there, and what's really important in this, is if you can describe your client's problem better than they can articulate themselves, better than anybody else can articulate it, and maybe even in a way that they haven't even been able to piece together or able to articulate at all. But if you can just describe the problem and show them you're right here better than they've ever
Mhm.
experienced before, they will automatically believe you have the solution. You don't need to tell them all of the certifications and all of the meanings of the acronyms behind your name and exactly how many years you spent in college. They will trust you if you can do that. And what it takes is both understanding the problem and then also understanding their language around the problem. It's not the same as your language after many years of becoming the brilliant person that you are. It's the language that they would use in talking to a friend the day before they met you at the coffee shop. It might not even be, that's like the first level of language when they're complaining with their friend, this problem is buggy. But if we want to go even deeper, it's really the language that they're probably not even comfortable to share with their friend, but it's that monologue deep in their head that's like, I'm not really good enough. And if I stop overcompensating for 1 second, people are going to figure out that I'm just an average person and everybody I ever loved will leave me. And that sounds funny and intense, but it's really kind of close to what's driving a lot of people if we dig deep down. And stories also give us an opportunity to go there ourselves. I can have a moment where I look into that darkness myself, and I'm doing it to take these people there with me and show them that, but it doesn't feel threatening. It's not confronting. It's not, you have a problem. It's like, I'm staring there in this problem. And they're like, well, he knows exactly how I feel.
Yes. And I think you can only do that when you went through the same thing. I would call it my pain becomes my purpose. And the purpose is helping others who are going through the same pain or through a similar pain. A little bit later on, let's say, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years behind me, something like that, because I can really feel them. And when I talk from my experience, how I felt it and open up and being kind of vulnerable, because I'm showing them I'm a human being. I went through the same thing. I felt the same. I was always almost there to give up. And sharing this darkness, going there with them, they're like, is she in my, and can she read my thoughts? Does she really like, I mean, how does she know? And I think here you become likable. Here you become trustworthy. And here you show also the credibility because you have a solution how to get out of there because you did it. So it's really connecting on this visceral level. And as you say, you can describe it in a way that you can't even articulate it. I think that's the key. So beautiful. Yeah, great.
Also, another important thing you mentioned, I know their pain, or it's something that I've gone through.
Yeah.
And a lot of problems that a lot of experts have is they either think that their problems or their situations aren't that interesting, or maybe they had a problem that was so extreme and so strange that nobody could ever identify. But either way, there's probably an underlying truth and an underlying essence and value that connects your story with their story. And there's a very specific statement, which is one specific karate move called a universalizing statement, which we want to use at the end of our story. And so maybe if I was like a soldier and I saw some like very extreme stuff and I wasn't sure, but I learned a very common lesson underneath it. I could use a universalizing statement like, well, for me, it was my experiences out there that taught me how important it was to be able to communicate, well with my team members. For you, it's probably not going to be combat, but it might be the everyday discussions that happen in your office or on your Slack channel or on this. And one thing's for sure, bad communication hinders teams no matter what the stakes are. And so I'm going to teach you how to communicate. I'm trying to improvise one, but it's how we can take the core essence of what we do and make sure that even if our story looks a little bit different, the point, and it's the same point, and everybody's invited.
Yeah. And I think also communication should make you feel something. And that brings me to my next question, because you are combining this storytelling with cutting edge marketing. And for me, marketing goes very much then into, what are the tactics, the tools to really convince a customer. It's going into sales. But I want to bring in one step in between, and that is branding. And as an entrepreneur or as an executive, you have personal stories to tell, and they intertwine with your brand narrative as a person, first of all, but then also you infuse that meaning into your company as a solopreneur, for example. How can individuals, entrepreneurs, or executives effectively align their personal stories with their brand stories to really create this compelling, authentic narrative? Because it is that what people want and what makes people buy into you and choose you over your other competitors that are out there in the market.
This is a great question, Brigitte, and there's even more at stake than what you've just highlighted here.
Yeah.
I'll share. I have a certain theory.
Okay.
After having told and crafted stories with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs at many different levels of success, many different niches, I believe that in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to have gotten your wires crossed in your brain somehow at childhood. Somehow. It doesn't matter how, but it happened. And this allowed you, this crossed wire energy allowed you to endure the early stages of building a business when everybody says it's a bad idea and you're going to prove them wrong and you're going to grind through it. And there's just this fire inside you that allows you to endure and go through this stuff. And it gets you to a certain point. It gets you to this threshold I call level 1 for now. And at level 1, you have all of the trappings of external success. It looks like you're making money. You maybe have a team. This is a lot of the beginnings of a lot of people's stories. Everything looks good, but I actually don't feel good and I'm about to burn out. And what's happening is this crossed wire energy that once was so helpful for you is now counterproductive. It means, like, for somebody who's maybe very good at sales, your business has grown to the point where it can't just rely on you for sales, but as you try to hire sales teams, you end up stepping on everybody's toes and falling back onto them. And so it kind of hinders your team, and you're not really in your best visionary zone anymore. You're kind of falling back on the things that you're good at and comfortable. And this ends up creating problems that seem insurmountable for the business. It creates these plateaus, and they're always trying to change these things. And then also another thing that's happening is the visionary that created this business, or the success that they've created, ends up taking all of their time just to manage that success, that they no longer have time to be in the state that actually fired all of this in the first place. They're so busy managing things and putting out fires that the actual magic that fueled the company has stopped. And so, why would a story help with this?
Mm-hmm.
A story helps with this in many different ways, in short-term and long-term ways. So people in this predicament will come to me and we need to get a story. And the first reason they need to improve their talk. And if they're in this situation, they probably had the same talk for several years. They're mostly winging it, and they made it up after like an espresso binge one night before a conference, and they've just been using it because it's been good enough. And now they're so busy that they're like, we need to create something fast. And so I have a process where I can ask a lot of questions and draw the right stories out, and we can create something really fast. And so the first thing that this does is we have a great effective speech quickly. And so they can go out and start using this, and they'll get results that they can see right away. And that allows them to justify their creative time again. They're like, well, I'm making money with this. This is actually working. I'm no longer getting C- results or having to sink a bunch of ads into my marketing, so I can actually be here instead of bugging my sales team. And that's great. That's the first level win. But then they're spending time again in their creative zone, in their zone of genius. And once again, expanding in this. And when you can really start to tell a story that excites you, we always want to if the story doesn't excite or resonate with you, then you can't expect it to resonate with anybody else. And so we want to find a story that clarifies why you're doing what you're doing and who you really are. And it's very likely, if you're in a scenario that sounds like this, that you've forgotten it and you are actually building a success of somebody else's expectations or some, who knows, or something or whatever, but it's not what you actually signed up for. If you can get aligned with your own story, then that allows you to get back in the visionary mode, stop stepping on your team's toes, be in the uncomfortable spot that you need to be in as the leader of this ship. And it allows you to be able to convey, here's my lane, and it should point to a vision that's bigger than yourself. That's important, that your team, when they see that, they're like, well, I see where my lane is now. I want to be a part of this. It should be something that your clients, when they hear about it, they see that it's not just about hiring you to make more money, but there's a bigger picture, a bigger vision. Your family sees this and can start to understand the work that you're doing more. And so there's a really you can take this alignment and start to use it as jet. And really one of the fun thing is, a lot of the times the stories that we think are like holding us back, the ones that we're a little bit ashamed to share, the ones that it's just like an edge for us. Often when we learn the techniques of how to tell the story of why this is a painful, juicy moment for us, these ones are actually the ones that can become the thing that launches you forward to the next level. And that's what I call, we said level 1, where they're blocked with this energy. Once you realign yourself with your visionary state, you're back in your line. You're going to start creating a business that's no longer achievement oriented or just trying to grow or survive or whatever, but actually impact and legacy oriented. You're going to wake up connected with a lot more purpose. Your team's going to feel that, and growth is going to change in a totally different way. And that's your role as a leader. And that's why a great story can make the biggest problems in your business seem to disappear or be so big anymore.
Yeah. So what I understand is that, stories that really count are those that we are afraid to tell, first of all, and that it's all about the vision that is bigger than ourselves. Because people want to belong to something. We want to achieve something. They want to be part of achieving something. So together we can achieve it. Something that becomes inspirational. And as you said, it's a jet fuel. So that's uniting, actually, a common goal, something that we want to achieve, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's connecting a value to a vision for a future and laying it out really clearly. And that's what your job is to lead your team. Yeah. That's what your job is to lead your clients. And that's what your job is to lead yourself. As the visionary, we need to figure out the futures to get everybody excited.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have to be passionate about what we are doing in order to motivate other people and inspire other people. Now, let's bring it to the next level, because nowadays there is a lot of online exposure. So how do you adapt storytelling as a technique for different platforms? Do you have to consider certain things for specific platforms, or is there anything that we need to pay attention to when it's about storytelling?
I think the length of time that you have is going to be the most important, and what you would choose to emphasize in that amount of time. I don't have a whole lot to say about anything shorter than a minute. The TikToks and the Reels, I do like to make them. I don't think I'm particularly brilliant, and I don't think it really serves. There is some storytelling to be had in there. Probably the beginning of the boundaries of where I would work in, or where I've worked with my clients, the shortest amount of time is about 3 minutes. This could be a really good YouTube video a lot of the times the framework or this format has been in a speaking competition. Either I've been in speaking competitions or my clients have been in speaking competition. And in a 3-minute video, this is particularly intense if you're at a speaking competition. Every word counts and you need to really think about every single one. Maybe the stakes are a little bit lower in a single YouTube video or something like that, but it's important to think about this. And if I only had 3 minutes, I would go 100% emotional impact. There's no reason to try and teach anything, or much more than just a really basic. Next up, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. This is enough time to teach one good idea and weave it in with a story. And then 10 to 20, 25, 10 to 30 minutes. This is like a short webinar, video sales letter kind of form. And again, I like teaching one idea or 3 simple, concise ideas, but not a whole lot, and building in a story here. But you'll see like that the story gets a good proportion. And then as we expand the time, we have much more room for teaching, and we make room for teaching, but keep the basic stories almost the same. If we have an hour, there's no need to take a 3-minute story and make it 30 minutes or something. But now we have more time to teach. And so in good long form content, I think YouTube and podcasts are like 10 to 20 minutes. This is when you can really sink into a good story or have a few good teaching points. My favorite format or platform is a signature talk. And this is what I work with my clients on. This is about 45 minutes in length and has 5 key components, or it's more like three key components. We have a good origin story that resonates with the audience and allows them to trust me. I have 3 teaching points, and I base my teaching points off what are the biggest objections that this audience would have to working with me or taking the next step with me, and how can I teach something useful to change their perspective. And then third, I have a good call to action and a simple story at the end that leaves them with the emotional message that I want. That matches what I tactically want them to do. And so what's great about this is it's if you can master all the components that make up a signature talk, then you can actually start to use a lot of these components in the smaller social media blips and start to kind of expand there. Or you can take your signature talk and maybe add more teaching, and it becomes a 1-day workshop. And that's where the real beauty and flexibility with this particular medium comes in. And it allows you to adapt, and we could speak more into each platform. But that's why I think this is like your white belt. When you get your signature talk, you can now have tools to start engaging with the world in a totally different way. And there's a new level of transparency and clarity when you're really being intentional with your communication on this.
Wow, that is great advice. To start with a signature talk and work that, become brilliant in that, and then use it for all the different other applications. Awesome. So how do we get there? Do you have some advice, like the first 3 steps that gets you there?
Yeah. As far as creating a great talk, if I had, or the key ingredients I would want to understand what the biggest problems my audience are and how they talk about it. And I would use that to construct a great origin story. I would try to get as visceral in those details as possible. And with my clients, I do a reverse or inverse, make them sit in the same feelings that they're describing and see if I can conjure up memories of when there was an emotional resonance, because we want to have that same emotional resonance. I would think of the 3 biggest objections that they have, like I said earlier, and I would come up with very simple things to teach them that wouldn't teach them how to solve those problems necessarily, but would teach them how to look at the problems differently. That would change how they feel about the problems, or how big the problem was, or how achievable. Great example of this, I had a client who was a naturopath, and we were building a signature talk for Parkinson, or people who wanted support with Parkinson's. Parkinson's is, or any neurodegenerative disease, is a very complicated and challenging and emotionally taxing situation. And if anybody listening has ever had somebody or family or experienced anything like this, a lot of the times going to the doctor will be, the doctor is a 5-minute visit. They look at a form for 3 minutes and then say, "You're getting worse. Take more medicine and come back in 6 months so I can tell you you're getting worse." Now, if I'm trying to be a naturopath doctor and get people to come to my clinic and invest a lot of money for some alternative support, if all of my patients are thinking that, there's no amount of talking about whatever the heck it is that I do, Chinese medicine in my office, that they're going to listen to. So I've got to deal with that first. So we created a story that would help them address this. And so I'm going to be Greg for a sec and we'll see what this feels like. So one of my clients, his name's Bill, came into my clinic, and of course we changed his name for privacy. People relax. He said, "Greg, I'm tired of being told by my doctor that I'm just getting worse after every visit. I'm trying to do all the things, but nothing seems to be working, and I'm just about ready to give up." And I say, "Bill, I don't think the doctor maybe knows all of the possibilities out there. And I think if we dig a little bit deeper, we can find some information." And so we started doing different labs and processes that would go deeper than what most doctors would look for. And in a few short tests, we discovered heavy metal toxicity was behind most of his symptoms, not Parkinson's disease, which means he was treating the wrong problem. And so Bill left my clinic feeling much more inspired and with options to be more in control of his life and well-being. So now we'll turn Greg off. But this is what we have to teach. And a lot of people just think like, well, heavy metal toxins, this is mercury, and this makes your brain go like this. And if we stop eating swordfish, then we're gonna, and it's like, no, that's what everybody tries to teach. That's how we try to teach. But I want to teach in a way that's going to open up the playing field for possibilities in your mind.
Yeah.
And when we can really, it's not intuitive. It's not how we learned in school. It's not how anybody taught us in school, and it's not how we work with our clients. It's a very different form of teaching. But when you can really start to see it and grasp it and understand it, it's like you can see the matrix in a lot of ways. You're like, wow, I know how to communicate here.
Yeah. Wow. What I find fascinating is because what you suggest here, like the key ingredients, looking at their biggest problems they have, right? But also, I think that is the key, how they talk about it. We never mention how they talk about it because how it makes them feel, what kind of words they use, so we can really go into how they feel. And then based on that, we can communicate and using the right words so we can address their problems in a way so that we really are on this visceral level, as you said. And then also, when it comes to the objections, looking at the problem differently. I think that's a wonderful advice. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Wow, that is so inspiring. And I want to go write my signature talk already. So, people have these obstacles when they have to tell a story. So what are the major or the common obstacles that are out there that you see people have?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones is I have a successful Instagram or a successful podcast or a successful YouTube channel. So I am already a good storyteller and I don't need any help. Or I have been speaking for years and it has worked well enough. Or I have my clients are successful, so I know how to tell good stories.
Yeah.
Or I wrote a book. Any number of these things are incredibly corrosive things that just, you corrode your own sales, you slow down your process, and it slows down everything else. When Having somebody that can hold a good space for you and reflect these things makes great speakers, and it makes great content faster and more fun than you could on your own. I'm not trying to be smarter than anybody that I work with. I don't I don't have any answers for. I just draw the questions out and provide a little bit of friction
Mhm.
to the intelligence and the wisdom that they already have to help them put their stories together in the right order. But some of the other blocks are, well, those are some of the later stage blocks. Some of the earlier stage blocks are, well, people don't want to hear my story. I don't want to just talk about myself.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
sounds sick or something like that. And you know what? It is selfish because you're thinking about yourself instead of thinking about your client. Because like we've talked before, a story is something to be in service of the client. We're setting a table for somebody. It's not actually about you. You're using your story, but if you're good and applying what we've listened to already, then you're using their language. So it's really about them. We just use our story as the canvas to paint their word. And so it's an experience we're creating for them. And so anytime you are worried about yourself, how somebody will receive you, how you will perform, or if you're good enough for this, or anything like this, this is imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is happens and occurs at every level of success. It will never permanently go away ever. But the good news is this problem is always the same and the solution is always the same. If you're focused on yourself, you're feeling imposter syndrome. And if you focus on the people that you need to be serving and what they need right now, that's the cure.
Beautiful.
And refocusing on that every time. So that's another big one, but it keeps coming. And then the next one is just being too deeply forested in your own experience. Most of us have spent at least a decade learning everything that we have to know, and we spend a lot of time around a lot of other smart people. You and I get to talk on podcasts with smart people all the time. And so we make the mistake of thinking that all the things that we're very familiar with are familiar with everyone, and that the way we talk is how everybody talks. And what happens with this is that we're really excited. We're like passionate about our solutions and all the things that we've learned. I'll give you an example of how this can really go wrong. So I had a client named Alex who worked with me on a presentation. To his core promise of his presentation was, I'm going to help you write Facebook posts that get you $250,000 in new clients from your Facebook audience, your warm Facebook audience. Great promise, right? Are you in? Cool. So he starts teaching, and he's breaking down a lot of the posts that he's written as how this process supports it. And he shows one with his mom, shows this other one, and he shows this one. He's like, I've got a video on this one. And you know what? I'm showing this video, and it's at one of my events. And at my event, I have laser lights and smoke machines and DJs. It's awesome. And I want to create a sense of FOMO for people on my Facebook page to really make them want to go to their events. And you're nodding, and you're like, this is cool. It feels cool to teach everybody. He's having a good time, right? Is this good teaching? Actually, it's not, because it's not really reinforcing that promise of, it's not getting me to think about writing a Facebook post that makes me make $250,000. Now I'm thinking, well, do I need an event? Do I need lasers at my event? Should I go to Alex's event? Like, and I'm thinking about totally different things. I'm not thinking about what's actually going to move me to the solution. This is what's called a tasty tangent. This is doing something that feels good to you. You're thinking about yourself, your solutions, your excitement, your knowledge, but it's not actually what the audience needs right now. And sometimes it can even feel good to you and feel good to the audience at the moment and still be a disservice to both of you.
Totally. Thank you for all these great examples. I'm wow. I have to digest all of that, what you just said. It's so true. Last question. Where do you see the future of storytelling? Is there kind of, because it's a dynamic nature, right?
Oh, I see it. I have a very clear picture of the future
So
of
what is it?
storytelling. It ties in with a lot of other converging technologies, right? I believe in the next 5 years, all of our fundamental values that underpin particularly Western culture and philosophy will come into question from artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
What we draw our value from in our day-to-day work and how we are productive will no longer be valuable because we will have these machines that can do these things for us. And so there is going to be a massive identity crisis on the scale that we've never seen before. And the only thing that we will have left that will truly be our own as humans is our stories, our experiences, our adventures, our wisdom, our insight.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. It's really about us, the blend of who we are with all that we are able, with all our strengths and weaknesses, vulnerability, our story, our experience, everything that is, that makes us as a human being.
I think it may sound scary, and I think it will be a bit of a bumpy ride to get there, but I am optimistic about the future. And I think that a future like the one I just described will allow us to truly be free and creative and give us the space to be the people that we've all aspired to be. I believe in those possibilities. And I am looking forward to playing my role in this biggest change in history. There's never been a wilder time than we are right now. So let's all enjoy this ride.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, me too. I'm excited about it because, we evolve with all the technology, with these external factors that we have to somehow integrate into our lives, whether private or professional. It's affecting all walks of life, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, no choice.
Good. So we're coming to the end, but we are not there yet. I'm doing a quick word wrap with you. I'm throwing out a term and you're going to answer like with a word or with a short sentence, but make it short, okay?
Deal.
Success. What does it mean to you?
Peace and spaciousness to create and really be playful.
Yeah, playful. Yeah, playful. That's important. Yeah, story.
I think it's like playfulness is a sign of mastery. And when you can be playful, it means that you're not worried about your script or what to say, or it's like that's what really gets. But anyway, now we're getting into too long of an answer.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship
is the most challenging and consistent process for self-development that you could ever hope for.
I so much agree. Vulnerability.
Creating a purpose for your pain and your wounds that allows to make medicine for yourself and others.
Okay, and brands. What do brands mean to you?
Well, this is a kind of a hot button one for me. Brands are hard. Yeah. I feel like a brand fills in the space between your words and supports you and backs you up and allows things to move more smoothly for you, is what I would say. I think it's like the background to you that flatters you, or hopefully.
Oh, I've never heard this before. What you think about it is just unbelievable. Yes, I can see it. Yeah, I can see it how you feel. It's interesting. Beautiful. Thank you, Cal, for being my guest today. It was just beautiful. I learned so much. I have to listen to it again and again. And it's so much wisdom, so many pieces of nuggets, golden nuggets that you mentioned today. It was just great learning from the story master himself. Thank you so much.
Hey, I really appreciate all of the time and effort and mastery that's gone into creating this show, who you are, and all of the amazing questions that you shared with me today that we got to dance around. And so I'm very grateful for this. Thank you, Brigitte. It's been an honor to be here.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you so much. If you like my show, follow BrandsTalk on your preferred app, share it on social media, and if you find a minute or two, leave a quick rating or review. Thank you so much. If you want me to guide you to become a future market leader by transforming your ambitions and passion into an online brand that radiates beauty, brilliance, and authenticity, attracting the clients and recognition you deserve, drop me an email. I'd love to be your guide on your hero journey. Check out my website, bridgetbrands.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I hope you will stay tuned in on the next episode when we dive into the world of brands.